and we are recording. So here we go. We have people coming in. Welcome, everyone. Michael, I'll let you do the chat.
Okay, perfect. Welcome, everyone. As you come in, I'm going to place a question in the chat. And if you can provide an answer to the question of what do you most hope to learn today?
Yeah, I have one.
Love it.
So welcome, guys. Welcome, everyone. You can see people trickling in already.
Excellent. Nora, can you just let me know when officially to start? Because I think we can.
Yeah, I think we can officially start. It's 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time because we're international now, Jen. Like people are sending us emails and asking, what time zone is this event in? And so, like, yes.
Yeah, it means you got good content that people are interested in.
Exactly. Such as today. Michael, you want to?
Yes, absolutely. I will. Thank you so much. Greetings and welcome to today's webinar hosted by the Orange County Chapter of International Coach Federation. On behalf of our chapter, I would like to welcome you all to today's event. And as I said, I placed a question in the chat, and the question is, what do you most hope to learn today? And please put your answers into the chat. My name is Michael Coffey, and I have the privilege of serving as a member of the programs team for our chapter. And I'm co-hosting today with Nanor Ohanessian. Did I get it? Did I? No, okay. We're happy to have you with us today. So a few bits of housekeeping. If you have questions for our presenter during her presentation, please type them into the chat. And also, I wanted to let you know our presenter, Jenn Grace, has also generously offered to stick around after the official ending of our time today, and she'll answer any additional questions you might have. And a final reminder and bit of housekeeping is I would like to remind you that today's webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel. So today's webinar is titled Content Marketing for Coaches, and we are in for a treat today. Jenn T. Grace is a nationally recognized business strategist, speaker, and award-winning author. Guided by the mantra, change happens in business, Jenn believes social change happens first in the workplace before spilling over into mainstream society. Jenn has been featured in Forbes, the Huffington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and on CNBC. Jenn passionately believes the more raw and real we can be, the deeper the connections we can experience. This drives her fierce commitment to bring voice to the invisible stories that free people from their isolation. She is committed to giving underrepresented voices power and a stage to share their stories, speak their truth, and impact their communities. She is the founder of Publish Your Purpose, a publishing company that includes programs like Getting Started for Authors and the PYP Academy that teaches aspiring authors how to write and publish their books. In addition to publishing over 60 books to share the stories of others, Jenn has written 6, including her memoir, House on Fire, which was published in September of 2020. Jenn is a marathon runner, an animal lover, a novice birder, and she lives in Connecticut with her family where it is currently snowing. Jenn, we want to thank you for being with us today to share your experience, knowledge, and wisdom, and we're going to hand it over to you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate the introduction. And so I see that we already have some questions that are rolling in through the chat, which I'm thrilled about. So I'm going to just dive in, and I will kind of warn you sporadically throughout that this is going to be fast moving content, because what I want to do for you today is to really just give you maybe a fresh starting point to really kind of rethink what you're doing with your content and how to use what you have and possibly recreate some new things as you move forward. So we have a kind of a 3-part agenda today. So I don't need to go through the synopsis. You already know because you're here. So I'm going to skip right past that. And here's going to be kind of the 3 ways that we're going to break this out today. And I'm couching this in the social media umbrella, but really it's just exposure in general. So wherever you might be interacting and meeting with your potential clients, this will definitely kind of apply throughout. But social media is really kind of the umbrella in which we'll be thinking this through. So we're going to focus on why being active and visible on social media is a must. We're going to talk about how to repurpose content that you already have and possibly create new content, and then how to actually apply this. Again, apply to social media. It's a little bit broader than just social media as well. So as I already kind of said, I know for a fact already that my presentation style is a bit like trying to drink from a fire hose. So I apologize in advance, but the beautiful thing about today's presentation is that we are recording it. So if I'm going a little bit too fast or you want to go back and rewatch something and slow it down, you are absolutely welcome to do so. So Michael already did a great job introducing who I am and kind of, what I do and all of those fun things. But I have this just kind of briefly to give you an idea around the content specifically that I have created pretty much for the last decade or so. So as mentioned in my bio, I've written 6 books. I've published over 60 at this point, but I'm going to be talking about podcasting, potentially blogging or guest blogging, using video as part of a content marketing strategy, leveraging Facebook, things like that. And so here's just kind of a high level of just the mass amount of content that I have been creating over the last decade, and a lot of which has really kind of given me the expertise to not only help the authors that I work with on a day-to-day basis, but also to be here presenting this information to you. So I want to get to know a little bit about you, and under the kind of umbrella here that everyone has a story. And what I find most people to miss the boat on quite frequently is they're not using their story enough within the business, and especially as coaches. You have such an opportunity to kind of really get a better sense of, for your people to get a better sense of who you are and what you stand for. So we're going to talk about your story quite a bit throughout. But Nanor, if you would be so kind, or Michael, to put the polling questions up for me, that would be fantastic. I just want to get a general sense of who you are that are here today. So I'm just curious, what type of coaching you all focus on, and it is multiple choice. So, just pick the one that is, applies to you. Oh, look, we've got some numbers moving. I love it. This is fantastic. And also, I should have mentioned this at the top, is that while, yes, I'm in snowy, cold Connecticut, and I'm envious of those of you who are not in a snowy climate right now, my company is also a sponsor of the ICF chapter here in Connecticut. So I'm super thrilled to be involved with that organization here locally. All right, it doesn't look like everyone's completed it, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna have us keep on moving forward. Nanor, can you put the results on the screen? Oh, perfect, thank you. Oh, actually, I think I can. Share results. So just, if anyone's curious what the results are, it looks like 49% is the highest with life coaching, and then executive leadership, 54%, missed that one. Awesome. All right, good stuff. All right, can we pop up the next poll, please? Here we go. So I just want to get an understanding of where you are with your marketing currently. Today we're talking about content marketing, and content really kind of applies to pretty much every single type of marketing thing that you might do. So I just want to kind of get a sense of, where you're at in all of this. Okay. All right. Almost everyone has voted. So it looks like the majority of folks here are in the I'm struggling category, with about 71% of you. And then about 26% are saying doing okay, but could do a little bit better. Okay, that's really helpful for me to know. So I'm feeling really good that we're going to get you some really good, tangible, kind of tactical things that you can do today to move forward and do a little bit better. All right, and then we have our final, I believe our final Oh, wait, nuts. Yeah, what type of content are you using? Just really kind of high level, what situations are you currently employing? And we're definitely going to cover all three of these and then some as we go throughout. All right. Responses are coming in fast and furious. I love it. Looks like the overwhelming majority of folks are using written content currently, with 82%, 18% video, and only 3% audio, and 18% a combination of all three. My goal today is to really kind of explain and demonstrate how we can do a combination of all three without adding a lot of extra work to what we're doing. All right. And then we have the chat window here to, ask questions and anything, explain like what you're looking for, what you hope to get out of here today, as Michael had said at the top. And then also if you have questions as we go throughout. And you will see me bouncing back and forth. I have a couple of monitors, one that has the chat on it, one that has my presentation on it. So I'm not multitasking outside of this conversation. I just want to make sure that I am, I would have ticked the option of none. Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. So let's dive into the content. So I want to start here with just this idea that, and we're going to start with, why being active. So people want to do business with people and not a faceless company. And I feel like I have been somewhat preaching this for a decade at this point, but I feel like the data points that support this just continue to keep coming and coming. That if you think about the last client that you brought in, how did they learn about you? Was it a referral? And most often when we're thinking about referrals, like that is that people to people type of transaction, and not like, hey, I called this executive coaching firm and I was, match made with a specific executive coach. I'm assuming that it's probably somebody that reached out to you specifically because of someone they know that had a good experience. And so what the beautiful thing about social media is that it allows us to put our face out there much more frequently and let people kind of get a sense of who we are, what we do, what we stand for, and help our clients potentially know, is this person a right fit for me or are they not? And so we're going to cover this first pillar of why be on social media. And honestly, there's three kind of primary reasons. Number one is that your competition is there. Whether you don't ever want to look at social media or not, the fact is that your competition is probably there, and they may be there in varying degrees. You may have some competition that is really hardcore there. They're rock stars. They're out there generating new content every single day. And then there's going to be competition of yours that may also be not super active on there too. So you got to try to find that sweet spot for what's going to work best for you. And the second big reason is that it's a great opportunity to engage your audience. Like there's so many good opportunities for engagement with your audience. It's just a matter of finding the right platform, the right channel, the right means, and to do it in a way that's going to be realistic for you, which we're definitely going to cover as we kind of go through. And then the final and probably the most important reason is that when we're talking, and I'm saying social media, but again, this is kind of marketing broadly, generating new opportunities. At the end of the day, the reason why we market our businesses is to generate leads that will generate sales, that will continue kind of the growth of us as coaches, us as an organization, or whatever your goals might look like. So generating new opportunities is absolutely, an amazing thing that we want to be doing. And marketing in general, social media specifically, can all be that opportunity to have a touch point in front of your potential client without it being a very quid quo pro situation where it's a very tit for tat, like, you're here to lead and I want this sale. When we're talking about social media and marketing and content marketing, we're talking about engagement. We're talking about kind of laying the foundation and the breadcrumbs to really demonstrate your value to your potential coachees that you could be bringing in to work with you. So the big thing here is that you have to have a strategy. And I cannot emphasize this enough. And I will use the word strategy throughout this entire presentation. We have to be thinking strategically about where we want to spend our time, where we want to put our energy and our efforts and our money, and where are our people. So the strategy piece is going to be something that I say this word very much kind of throughout this entire presentation because it's so important. But I want to start just by kind of defining what I'm talking about when I'm talking about content marketing, because there may be, a variety of different definitions, but really it's just a strategic marketing approach that's focused on creating, distributing, relevant, consistent content. And that content could be in a variety of different forms. So here's just a handful of different kind of content ideas that you can think about. Now, these are just a few. There's many other types of content that you can throw in here, but here are the ones that I find to be most relevant most often when I'm speaking to kind of groups of coaches or people who are, looking to expand your reach and your brand. Really, that's kind of what we're talking about, is you as a personal brand. So a lot of you, like overwhelming amount of you, said that written content is really kind of where you're at. And so, we have long form articles, blog posts, just social media posts, memes. I'm not sure who's using memes or not, but they can definitely be effective. Case studies, if you have case studies about happy clients, white papers, if you've written a book. Do you have just content from an email that was really amazing because you had a potential client ask you a really specific question and you had to really think about how you would answer that? These are all areas of content that you might already have that you can repurpose in different ways, which we are going to talk about. And so for video, it could be that you have some kind of promotional video. It could be a speaker reel. It could be a sizzle reel. You might have a weekly show, a bi-weekly show, something where you're in front of people. Webinars are amazing. Being on other people's platforms and in front of their audiences in some kind of interview style, or being on someone's podcast. Those are all really awesome ways that you can get in front of people. And then audio, there's probably a dozen other examples of audio, but podcasts are really kind of the big one, which really kind of transfer over into video too, because a lot of podcasts can be done both video and audio. And then meditation seems to be something I am noticing much more frequently from a lot of different sources, that thinking about who you serve and the style in which you kind of serve people. So if meditations are something that you are actively suggesting to your clients, why not you be the one that records the meditation and gives it to them as just part of working together? Or maybe it's something that you release part of the meditation to kind of lure them in, because what we're trying to do is kind of lure people into your marketing funnel or into your sales funnel. And that can be done in a lot of different ways because people learn differently. So everyone, and what I've noticed to be true typically is that we often create the content in the same way that we most prefer to learn through. So for everyone, I'm not 100%, this will track here, but for a lot of you, written content was kind of the way it is, the way that you really are creating content. But do you consume content written first, or are you a video or an audio person? My experience kind of shows that typically, I'm an audio person. I do create a lot of audio content, and I love video too. Written, I'm a publisher, so I'm reading manuscripts all day long. So to me, the written word is much more okay, I have to do this. Whereas video and audio, I'm I want to consume this information. So there's a lot, the point being is that there's a lot of different ways that we can break down content. There's a lot of different things that we can do. And what I want to talk to you about now is thinking about how do we create new content or repurpose existing content. Since most of you indicated that you're kind of in that struggling phase, what I would love to think about is how can we take that struggle and how can we use things that you already have and how can we repurpose them so it's not a huge, emotional, exhausting, daunting task for you to have to come up with new information? Because I guarantee you're probably sitting on a gold mine of information. You just don't realize it yet. So I'm hoping that the next section here is going to actually really be able to help you kind of figure that out. So what I want you to consider is taking an inventory. And I do have a worksheet that will be available for you to download. You can even go to the site now if you want to, but I prefer you pay attention. You can come and get it after. So we're going to talk about content first, because there's a content inventory and then there's going to be a marketing inventory, and they're very similar, but a little bit different. And I have a worksheet for both of these. So the content inventory is what I want you to do is I want you to make a list. So I want you to make a list of all of the things that you can think of that you have already created. And so here I'll put a whole bunch kind of on here as an option. So list any articles that you've already been featured in. So, there's even if it's your small town local newspaper that you are convinced that no one has read, it's okay. That's still content. That's still your information. And it's still something that you can repurpose. Thinking about any blog post that you've been featured in or quoted in. So again, it doesn't have to be your content that has been already created. It's using content that you have been featured in. So I just got featured in someone's blog post where they were talking about how kindness is really kind of the thing that we need to be leading with currently in our, in our current climate. And so when we're leading with kindness, she ended up pulling a quote out of my memoir, which I wasn't expecting because it's a memoir, not really a business book. But, she pulled that quote out, and that gave me, kind of a beautiful, beautiful opportunity to promote her work, but then also say, hey, this is really cool because I was quoted in this. We do have a question of what's an example of a blog post. And so that would be if somebody has, interviewed you. So say, for example, somebody that has some blog on leadership coaching. And so they asked you if you wanted to be featured in that blog. And maybe it's a quote or two, like one or two sentences of something that you said that was really inspiring to them that they include. It could be that you have had an entire write-up about who you are and what you do and how you serve people. And so a blog post is really just a page on a website somewhere. And it's really in the reason for putting it into a blog format is that you kind of have that, and we're going to talk about scheduling in a little bit, the kind of consistency. So with blogs, when you say, oh, I have a blog, the blog is kind of like the mothership. Like I have this location that you can go to that that I'm going to be regularly posting content to. And when we're thinking about, you could just do an article here or there, and that kind of eliminates the amount of pressure potentially than having like a consistency of a blog. But as I will get into, consistency is really a huge, huge key to being really kind of successful at content creation. But the key is going to be deciding what consistency works best for you. And we're going to talk about that. So you can look at your website and see, what content do I have on my website that I can repurpose somewhere? It could be your own blog, if you have your own blog, or again, your own article. Do you do trainings or workshops or seminars or webinars, anything like that? Grab that material. Past newsletters. So like this is a lengthy list going on here. So we have nine pieces total. So when we're thinking about just kind of all the different places that you can pull content from, what we're doing here is we're just creating an inventory. You don't have to do anything with it just yet. We really just want to kind of create an inventory of where do you already have content that exists that you can pull from and potentially reuse. And we're going to talk about how to actually reuse that in a few minutes. Does this make sense to everybody in terms of just kind of coming together, putting a list together of all the places that you've been to just have to then kind of move forward with? And you're welcome to, okay, good. We got a thumbs up. Perfect. Okay. So now what I want to switch to, because they are so interlinked, and then I'm going to talk about how to use this information, is a marketing inventory. And again, here's another kind of spreadsheet that you can grab. So what I find to be one of the biggest barriers to successful marketing is that people are doing things that they do not want to be doing. So if you are someone who hates being on video, you don't like looking at yourself on video, you don't like hearing the way you talk on video, that's not your preferred medium, but you love being on podcasts, then what you'd want to be thinking about is how do I do more of that versus forcing myself into a zone that just doesn't feel good for me? Because there's going to be a lot of experts out there that say video is, the technology of 2021, like everybody's doing video. But at the end of the day, if you hate doing video, you are much better off doing the medium that you like doing, even if it's not that hot buzzword and the hot topic that everybody's doing, because your energy is going to kind of come through in a not helpful way if you are feeling like you are forced to be in front of that camera. So what I want you to do is I want you to be thinking about, again, kind of the content that already exists and marketing that you already have. So if you've been on, maybe you've been on a local talk show, maybe you've been on a local radio show, really thinking about what do I like doing? Like really, what do I like doing? What is enjoyable to me? And then it's marrying that with what I've done in the past, which is a little bit of what I was just saying. So we end up with this kind of spreadsheet, and you're welcome, I put the link up, so you're welcome to download that at your leisure. And so what we want to just think about, again, it's in a spreadsheet. You can just grab a piece of paper and do this. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's really to just kind of give you an assessment of the lay of the land. And what I find 9 out of 10 times is that you have much more content than you realize you even had, because you weren't thinking about content in the way in which you've already created it. So, looking at, this marketing inventory. So this goes on for a couple of slides here. There's just a bunch of different options. So newsletter, podcast, if you have your own podcast or it's being on someone else's, it's looking at just your social media accounts. And so what we're looking at is, how many people have either seen what you've done, come to your website, or on your mailing list, just really kind of go through all of the numbers. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's really going to give you a better sense of what you have. Then thinking about, how often have you done this in the past? So is it daily, weekly, monthly? Is it once a year? Is it, I did it once and I never did it again? Really kind of tracking this information in this tab. And then the big question that we've been talking about is, do you enjoy this activity? Because if you do not enjoy it, I encourage you to just strike through the entire row, because there's nothing good about being forced into doing something that you don't like. But what I would encourage you to do is make notes of what is it about it that you do like, and what is it about it that you don't like, because that's going to give you good, valuable feedback to just know yourself more, because you might have a gut instinct of, I hate being on video. I've never really thought about it, but I hate when somebody asks me if I'll be on their video show. That's great data to know, because when you're thinking about increasing your marketing opportunities and your marketing efforts, then you can kind of just eliminate, I'm not even going to worry about video. That just stresses me out. Just the thought, just the word video stresses me out. I'm not going to go down that path. But we have that opportunity to say, you know what, but I love writing. I love writing so much that what if I did more writing for other people and got in front of their audiences? So that's really kind of the purpose of why we want to kind of take an inventory, because I am going to get into how do we now just think about how can we repurpose the content that we currently have. So again, here's a little bit more of the, other things. Print collateral, program books. Have you done ads for, does your ICF chapter have some kind of membership directory? What does it say? Grabbing that data, because almost every single day, I know, at least for me, I'm sending someone some information about something that I do. And so all of those opportunities that we're sending the information out to people, how can we streamline that and kind of pull the best of the best? Like, wow, I just sent that email. It was the first time that I clearly articulated so crystal clear exactly what I do. That's the content that you want to kind of take and move forward, rather than maybe your boilerplate about you that you might have on your website. So just because something is in one place now doesn't mean that that is the something that should ultimately stay there. But I also don't want to overwhelm you too much into thinking about how on earth am I going to start to reconfigure everything, because that's not the point of today's session. The point of today's session is to really just think about what you have. How can you repurpose, what you do have? So if we have any questions, please feel free to throw them in here. I do see a question that's, what if you haven't gotten anything other than a website to inventory? That's fine. It's a good starting point. I would say maybe, if you only have your website, because that's really been your focus, I would go through your emails. That's where I would really be looking for the potential gold. Like what, I'm going to give some ideas of thinking about different types of topics that you can talk about in a couple of minutes. But it's okay, because you're not, I feel like you are in good company if you only have a website that you're pulling from. And Brian is asking, is a blog tab on my coaching website a must? It's not. At the end of the day, if you need to do what is manageable and controllable for you. So if I were to say, I produce at least one live video a week. Most weeks I end up doing 2 live videos. And then we also have a blog that goes out, and then we have a whole bunch of social media. That is extreme for someone who might not have any of that right now. And I recognize that. So I would never say, well, you need to start doing 2 videos a week. That's not realistic. So for you, maybe it's not thinking about having a blog tab. Maybe you're just going to create a thought leadership piece. So maybe it's an article that's 500 words. Maybe it's an article that's 1,000 words. And you just create that one piece, make it a page on your website, and then share that out with people. So that way you're not training people to believing that now you have this active blog that's going to be posting on a consistent basis. So what I want you to be thinking about is, how do we start small? Like, I want baby steps here. I don't want any kind of gargantuan leaps, because we know that those are going to fall flat if we try to do too much too quickly. So now we have this content, potentially. So some of you do, some of you don't. But we have this content that we're potentially working with. So one of the simplest ways to think about this is, if you have a blog post, how can you turn it into video or audio? And this could be something as simple as, all right, you have a blog post, or it's an article, whatever it might be. I'm just saying blog post, but really when I'm saying blog post, I'm thinking like written content on your website. So you could have a page on your website that's beautiful, and it's describing who you work with and who your ideal person is. You could take the exact wording, or if you prefer to kind of go rogue off script, which is really kind of my preference, I don't like reading word for word, you could just go to social media. You could do a Facebook Live if you want. You could do an Instagram Live, and just kind of read what is on that page and just say like, hey, and just be really vulnerable and honest. The more honest that we can be in our marketing efforts, the more people trust us. So it could be turning that video on and saying, listen, I attended this content marketing this webinar, and one of the things that I committed to doing was to be more active on social media. So today, I just want to talk to you about, enter anything here. You could do the same thing with audio. Audio is a little bit more tricky on social media, although there are programs. I'm trying to think of the name of the one that we use. There are programs that basically let you narrate over an image. And if anyone can think of the name of one, please, by all means, throw it into the chat. It'll pop in my head. And so if you don't want to be on video again, it could be that you just narrate, 10, 15 seconds about, maybe it's a success story of a client that you have, or maybe it's something that you're really passionate about. And you can marry that with audiogram. They're called audiograms. Got it. And just marry it with an image. And now you have an audiogram that you can just start sharing on the social media platforms that you enjoy. And so this goes in all of the other ways too. So if you have a video, how do you turn it into a blog post, or how do you turn it into audio? This is really easy in terms of the video, is that with a video, for the most part, you can do a file save as and save it as an audio. And for a blog post, you can transcribe it. And we have somebody that noted a transcription service in here, which is absolutely perfect. I love transcription. Transcription can save so much time. So if you have interviews where you've been interviewed by other people, get that file from that person and say, I'm just using it for internal purposes, although they don't typically care what you're doing with it, but, and I just want to have it transcribed. So I easily could say to Michael or Nanor, can you make sure that I have access to this presentation, because I want to have it transcribed, and I could turn this entire presentation into some kind of like ebook or some kind of download that, instead of course I could say, hey, go to YouTube, watch it there. Some people just aren't watching types, or they only want to watch it when they're live. So they might prefer to read it, or maybe they just want the slides. And so we want to be thinking about, how do different people consume different information? And in this case, I could have it transcribed, and it would probably come out to like, I probably have like 60 slides in here total anyway. And then that could easily probably be like a 60-page ebook if I wanted to create one. And then the point with that is that you put it on your website to again, lure, I keep saying lure, but lure people in to kind of the great content that you have, to prove and demonstrate yourself to them for why they should work with you versus somebody else. And so there's somebody's asking to put the transcription service in here. There's a lot of them, and I will share my email address at the end. I have a whole spreadsheet actually of transcription services that we've used and have recommendations, just because I work with authors on a day-to-day basis, and we help our authors with figuring out what their marketing looks like. And so a lot of times they're asking for recommendations. So I have a whole spreadsheet of possible options. I like Rev, but Otter is a great suggestion too. They're all kind of generally the same. Some do a lot better than others, but you can't go wrong, especially if this one is free. Cannot go wrong for free, especially where we are at now, which is at a starting point. We're not trying to go too crazy too quickly. We want to ease our way into this. So if you have access to free resources, absolutely take advantage of them. Audio, same thing as the others. Like, how might you take an audio that you've done, turn it into a blog post, turn it into a video? So you kind of get the drift of what I'm talking about here, like how we can kind of think about that. So now that was just kind of like, how do we repurpose what we have? So the assumption here is that you have something to repurpose. So per the question around the website. Now, what can we think about when we want to generate new content? And I know this even came up a little bit when Michael, Lenore, and I were talking before we went live. So hopefully this will be helpful to you as well. So thinking about generating new content. And again, as you have questions, keep on putting them in the chat. And then I will also leave time at the end for us to discuss them too. So when we're thinking about generating new content, some things to think about, because I think what happens, and I feel like I am the queen of overcomplicating things sometimes. So I fully get it if you are, in the same boat as I am with overcomplication. But here are just a handful of things to think about that you could create content around. So the easiest is starting with what are the most common questions your clients ask. Now, you could break this out into two ways. You could probably break this out into 1,000 ways, but one way could be, what are the most common questions your prospective clients ask? And then the secondary way could be, what are the most common questions that your clients ask? That information might overlap. It's almost probably like a Venn diagram. And so that's a great place to start. So if you're sitting, looking at Facebook thinking, oh, Lord, I have this coaching page that I have not updated in 3 months. What should I possibly put there? You can easily just say, you know what, I was having a conversation with a client today, and this came up, and for whatever reason, I'm feeling really compelled to share this with you. You could do this just turning on the camera and going live and just kind of rattling off what you think. Or you could just actually write it down in a very conversational tone. You want your prospective clients to get a sense of who you are through your written, verbal, visual kind of communication. And so again, it goes back to, what are you most comfortable doing? In my case, I would just pull up my phone and just go live and start talking. That is my preferred medium because it doesn't require as much planning and preparation as writing something down would be. However, I talk to people all the time where just the thought of them kind of going rogue and off the cuff about something really kind of scares them to the core, and they want to have that very scripted way of doing it. There's no right or wrong. It's what works for you. And so, doing some questions that come up often, or, sharing personal information around you and like what is interesting to you, because that a lot of times is really the personal piece of things can be the difference between swaying somebody into wanting to work with you or not wanting to work with you. And I was just on a podcast around social media in particular, and the conversation that we ended up having was, when we think about marketing, it's not always how do we attract the right client. The other half of that equation is how do we repel the wrong client. So not all clients are equal. I think we could all agree to that. If you really think about, who do you love working with and who, do you not love working with? And so we want to repel the people that are not going to be the right people for us within what we're doing. So the more honest and real and raw and just expressive we can be with things that are of interest to us, the hobbies that we have. And, we're in a very kind of like a political hotbed of a climate right now, and have been for a while. So if you are very clear around just maybe your political activism, and for a fact that you wouldn't want to work with someone that falls into some spectrum, then you could just be really vocal about your political views, which would then eliminate those potential people from starting to work with you. And then you realize, oh, wow, we have a big clash here. And I'm using politics. I feel like that's the very easy example here. But it could be, just kind of hobbies that you're interested. Like what are things that you enjoy doing that, if somebody else knew about, they'd be like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. Like I'm interested in that too. Like I always, I have it in my bio. It's a little bit just kind of like lighthearted of like, okay, so I run, half marathons and marathons. I love animals. I love watching birds. So when I connect with somebody, if they've read my bio, they're like, oh my God, I ran a marathon too. Or, oh my God, I'm just starting to think about running, and I don't really know what to do. And it gives you that entry point to have a conversation with somebody that's not transactional. It's deeper than that. And so the more mutual common ground that we can find with our prospective clients, the more that relationship can kind of deepen and evolve, because they're going to have a different type of trust with us. And then, are there based on kind of all of these things, is there kind of like a series that you can kind of create? So thinking about, and again, I'm using the term blog post, but like, is there a series? So what could that be? Like, do you have, 6 questions that inevitably, or do you have a 6-step process? What might that look like that you can put into a process? So numbers, when it comes to books, so books are my expertise. With books, numbers always work really well. So if you have the 7 steps to something, the six marketing tips to whatever, anytime we're using numbers, it can really kind of help people wrap their head around, like, oh wow, that makes sense. Like, okay, there's going to be 6 of these things coming. So if you do a series, and this is actually how I wrote my first book, is that I had a blog series that was around 6 steps around marketing. And so then that kind of evolved because I could see where people were really interested in each of those steps. And then I ended up creating a book out of it. So it's just kind of, and that's like this last bullet point is just a little bit further forward, kind of thinking about this. Now, I want to give a quick example of someone that I have worked with. And this is just a random spreadsheet that he came with. So I, as you also, I do a lot of coaching. I do kind of book consultation and coaching. So I'm working with people on their books, but also kind of the content that wraps around their book to really kind of elevate them as a thought leader. And so I kind of challenged him. I was like, well, let's talk about, what you would do. He ended up coming with the 15 key factors and then rattled off this entire spreadsheet really, really quickly. Because I said, what do you want to talk to your clients about? What is going to be the thing that we can get you on, doing it on LinkedIn, doing it on Medium, posting it to your social media channels, getting it on your website, like all of the things. Because once you have a spreadsheet like this, and 15, I will say, like, that's a bit excessive. So, and he loves to do things in large quantities. So in this case, you might have 3. It could be like the 3 key factors to improving your social emotional awareness in business, if that's something that you're kind of coaching around. And then you have your 3 key factors. So now you can say, all right, all I have to do is write about this first kind of key factor. And then you can put it in all of the different places that make sense to you. And we are going to talk about like where, like, the where and the frequency, which I know that there's a question in here about frequency, which we're going to talk a little bit about. So it's just a way to help you think about your content a little bit differently. And you might be stumped thinking, I have nothing to write about. I would absolutely challenge you with that statement, if that is something that you're thinking about right now, because a lot of times our limiting beliefs and our self-doubts and the imposter syndrome all creep in when we are putting ourselves out like in the front to like really say, I am an expert on this topic. So, and if you do want to stick around for a few minutes after the end, I can certainly brainstorm some ideas with you if you're kind of struggling with what you could write about, because I'm confident I can crank out a handful very quickly for you. So any questions related to kind of what we're talking about? And I'm going to keep on moving. I told you it was going to be like a fire hose. So just go back to this. It's going to be on YouTube, pause, take a minute and then kind of keep on going. So we're going to talk about applying this to social media. So we're at kind of our 3rd step here. And this is where I'm going to talk about kind of the potential frequency and things like that. And so this is more specific to the social media piece of it, because at the end of the day, when we have content, we need a vehicle to distribute that content. And so social media is really one of the best ways to do it. It could also be like, when I'm thinking social media, like even Medium. Medium is a great place for putting out your content, or Quora, or Reddit, like all of those places that, in depending on who you serve, where your people are at, there's a lot of variables here, but I'm just kind of, throwing out ideas. So again, it's not only just social media, but now we are going to talk about social media. And I cannot emphasize enough, we have to be doing this with a strategy in mind. If you just take this information and just start going hog wild tomorrow and posting things here or there, getting all excited, and then you do it for 5 days and then it dissipates, that wasn't actually helpful for what you're trying to do. You really want to be thinking about consistency, longevity, what's going to be the thing that you can keep up with. Back in 2012, when I started my first blog, I committed to doing a communications related post on Tuesdays and a marketing post on Fridays. And I kept up that cadence for like 4 years, I think it was. And it was absolutely exhausting. And if I could go back in time, I would not have done it that way. It also yielded 4 books from kind of all of that content, and, a podcast, and a lot of things kind of emerged from it. But I set myself up for stress because it would be like midnight on, Thursday going into Friday, and I would be panicking and being like, oh my God, I didn't write anything for tomorrow, and then have to stress out and write it. At this point, I know better to, if we put out a piece of content that's like every 2 weeks, I'm talking about written content, I'm really happy about that. But in terms of video content, I'm out consistently every single week. There's not, if there's a week that goes by that I'm not putting out content, it's because of a specific reason, which recently I threw my back out shoveling snow, the joy of living in Connecticut. And so I missed a couple of weeks there. So other than that, like, it has to be something like that serious for me to miss a week. But that's what's comfortable for me. And for you, it might be that you can only reasonably do this once a month, and that's totally fine. So I want to really reinforce that wherever you can start, that's okay. So going back to what do we like doing, right? So we want to really be thinking about that. And I'm just going to keep on drilling this home. So stick with comes natural, stick with what you like doing. Second piece is pick your platforms wisely, because there are so many options. It is ridiculous. And I don't even keep up with them at this point because I find it even stressful, and I teach around this. So, let's think about some key questions to think about where your clients might be at. So really what you want to do is, and if you email, because I don't have a link in here, but I have it's for target readers. It's a target reader worksheet, but I have my email address at the end. If you want to email me, I'll happily send you that worksheet, and you can basically just swap out reader with client, because everything applies. It's thinking about like where, what type of media do they consume? What platforms are they on? Because there are so many marketing experts that drive me crazy, to be personally honest, that are saying, be everywhere. You have to be on all the platforms. So everyone's raving about Clubhouse right now. Clubhouse is great, but is that where your people are? Yes, no, I have no idea. They might be, but does it make sense for you to be using time and energy to be starting on a platform that is so new and really hasn't been proven yet in terms of an ROI? Because at the end of the day, you want business to come from your activities. So you want to track that return on your investment, the return on your revenue. So we don't want to be all things to all people. Like I said, you want to repel people as much as you attract people, because the people who want to work with you will gravitate to you. And those that don't, they will go off into the distance, and it will be much better to not have them be working with you, because then it's just turns into a whole thing. And you could just go do a survey with your current clients. Just ask them, what media do you consume? What social media platforms you're on? If I were on those platforms, would you follow me? Would you find it interesting? Would I just be adding to the noise? Really get data points from the people you're already working with. So there's a lot of potential strategies here. So you can just do straight up, I'm going to do like a social media. I'm going to start my own accounts. I'm going to get myself kind of situated up and running. You could say, I don't really want to do that, but I would love to be a columnist for a magazine or something like that. Or I want to write, but I want it to be on other people's platforms so I can kind of encourage people to work with me somehow. It could be, and we already talked about this a little bit before, but it could be long form content, Medium, LinkedIn articles, the HBR, is there an opportunity with that? And then, PR type of outreach, so these are all kind of like strategies. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to get to with all of these strategies is that we want to take the conversation from a one-to-one to a one-to-many. And so when we're thinking about one-to-many, we still want it to be personal and we still want it to be intimate. So it's not that you would get on a video and just start saying, hey, 100 people world, and just being like really kind of callous about it. It's more still, like right now there's 45 of us on this call. So I want to be speaking directly to you, the person listening to this, not saying like everybody and being like really, really vague, because we're having a conversation because you're learning one-to-one, even if there are 44 other people on this call with you. So when we're thinking about our content, it's how do we leverage the content that we have and the new content that we will create. And really the leverage point is the one-to-many conversation, which is why I'm a big fan of books, because that's an opportunity where you are writing at one time and everyone who's reading that book, it's an intimate experience. And that's kind of what you're going for. So this is just kind of a graphic to kind of demonstrate what I'm saying. There's a lot of different options we got going on over here. So the content is in the middle, and there's all of these different things that you can be posting on. So if you are not in a visual business, stay off of Pinterest. Do not waste your time there. Or if you are just, not having any part of Twitter because you hate using it, don't waste your time on Twitter. And so this is in conflict to what a lot of marketers suggest, because they want you to be on all of the platforms. But if you're going to be kind of half-assed on any platforms, you're better off not being on it at all. You're better off just being on one or two that you do really well, rather than having a bunch of inactive sites that are kind of following you around the internet. So I want to talk about creating a content calendar. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly because I know we have about 11 minutes left. So again, strategy. So do what works for you and be realistic. So frequency is a question that comes up a lot. So here are you can take a screenshot of this page right now if you would prefer. Again, you'll have access to this after as well. But this is just this changes by the day, honestly. So understand that every platform has a different kind of rhythm and a different expectation from people. So with a blog or your website, you can do it once or twice a week. You can do it once or twice a month, as long as you are consistent. I think that is the thing that I will say over and over again is consistency. So if you start doing a blog once a week and you are rolling for a few months and then you disappear, the people who've been actively following that for those few months are going to be like, what happened? Where did they go? I don't know what happened. And so you want to just keep the expectation for your audience very predictable, because predictability in this case is really important. And so these are just kind of some best practices. Twitter can easily be up to 12 times a day. Do you want to be on Twitter 12 times a day? Probably not, because you have clients to serve. So, but if Twitter is where you get your people, then get your butt on Twitter 12 times a day. But again, in Twitter, I don't think is probably a hot spot for anybody's coaching clients, but you never know. And then so, here's some others. And then knowing what the best day and times to be posting on these different platforms are. And is there a better day of the week to put the content out? I do not know any of that information off the top of my head because it does change a lot. But if you just go into Google right now and say, when should I post on Facebook for my business page? You're going to get a ton of information. What you want to pay attention to when you're searching is looking for the most recent. So if you see an article from 2015, do not read that one. It's not going to be helpful. You need to read something that's in at least 2020, if not 2021 at this point. So there's a lot of automation software available to you. So I use Hootsuite and Edgar. Those are two platforms that I am a big fan of. They allow you to schedule your content. So you basically just take a day a month and you just go in and you create tons of different content. You stick it in the system, you add some images, and you let it do its thing. And so that way, when you're on social media, you can just worry about engaging with people rather than having to create and post at the same time. Benefits include that it is saving you a lot of time, and it keeps the content coming out even if you're not actively on social media. Because I think social media in a lot of ways there's a darkness to social media. There's an overwhelm to social media. There's fighting everywhere you turn on the most innocuous things. There's infighting about it. I saw a fight yesterday about how often you throw your pillow out. And it was like a raging debate. And it's like, does anyone really care enough to be fighting on the internet about when you should throw your pillow away? I don't think so. However, people do. So you don't want to be draining your energy by being kind of going in there thinking, all right, I'm going to go in, I'm going to post some content today. And then all of a sudden, 15 minutes later, you're now like enraged over something that has nothing to do with you. So scheduling it to come out automatically, then you get the notifications of like, oh, someone engaged with that. Then you can go there specifically for that reason. It can be a huge, huge time saver. So there is a awareness days. So here's just a real good tip. And I'm just about to wrap up. So here's a real good tip. If you can search I think I have the wrong, if you just type in awareness days into Google, you can get access to this too. And so every month and almost every day within a month has something to celebrate around it. So we're in February, it is Black History Month. In March, it's Women's History Month. June is Pride Month. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So there's all of these different months. So if there is something that is really important to you or the people that you serve, use those opportunities to share information. So we have so many authors. But we have, we have a Black History Month graphic that has all of our authors. We have a woman, which we'll be putting out soon. The Women's History Month will be all of our women authors. Pride Month, all of our LGBTQ authors. And so it's just something as simple as that, where you're celebrating your clients instead of thinking like, all right, what am I going to write about? Like, just celebrate your clients. Use this. There used to be a phrase called newsjacking, where you would go in and see what the hashtags are, and then just kind of like hijack it to fit whatever it is that you're talking about. So there's got to be something in here that is relevant to what you're doing. And if it's not, maybe it's that you put some kind of philanthropic bend to what you're doing, and you have an opportunity to say, all right, I'm going to give a percentage of my sales of this month to Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in September. That makes you look good. And it also gives you that opportunity to stand above your competition. Here are the resources that I mentioned as we went throughout. You're welcome to screenshot this page and go check them out. I will also email them to you if that is something you would like. But my parting words are: consistency is key. So strategy and consistency. And it does not matter what the consistency is, as long as it is consistent. Once a month, once a week, could be daily, whatever's going to work for you. And start small. Start on the early, give yourself a pass. So if you're like, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to keep up with this, start once a month. If you get into a groove and you're like, all right, I'm really loving this, then make it 2 times a month. But do not do it in reverse, because you're going to stress yourself out, and it's going to add just extra anxiety that you don't necessarily need. And be patient. Patience is the absolute key to all of this, because it does take time. I have produced thousands of different things, I feel like, over the time, if I could have added everything up. And it takes a while. And so you just have to kind of be patient and be consistent as you go through. So I thank you all for listening to me crank it out. I did warn you in the beginning, so I apologize if your head is spinning and you don't know where to start. But I will happily take some questions as we are talking. And here's my email address for anyone who wants to ask, get any of the resources that I mentioned. And I see that we have a question. Do you have any thoughts about branding your social media marketing so you have a brand identity for your post? Absolutely. So if you have a logo already, I would absolutely use those colors as much as you possibly can. So my company colors are kind of what you see on the screen here. And so a lot of times when we're posting things, there's definitely a consistency either with the colors, or there's a consistency with the font that's being used. We're in the process of kind of revising our stuff quite a bit. But absolutely, because what you want to do is that you want people to start to see your face, your name with certain colors, certain content. And some of it's like the subtle piece of it, and other parts are very kind of like direct and overt. Resource slide again, please. Yes, there you are. You can take a screenshot of that. Do we have questions? I'm happy to answer anything that is on your mind. I see, does this work, but I'm not sure what you're asking. Oh, does it work? Oh, does it translate into sales? It absolutely does. Absolutely. But the key is the consistency and kind of coming back to it again and again. I would never suggest, all right, go put out some content this week. You're going to have a new client next week. It doesn't work that fast. But there are ways that you can kind of engage your existing audience. So going to your client list, you don't even have to have an email list, going to your client list and just inviting them into whatever you're doing, and start there, because then that can start, it's like a snowball. It'll gather a little bit of steam and it'll kind of keep rolling down the hill. What about reposting someone's content and commenting? Absolutely, especially if it's somebody that you're kind of courting in your, you want them to work with you, or if it's somebody that you already work with. That's something, if you go to our social media, which I believe I have on here, especially, I think if you go to, where is it? All right, hang on, here we are. If you go to any of my social media, especially the Publish Repurpose, which is my publishing company, we share a lot of content about what our authors are doing. Because if you're an author, you have content, you're a thought leader, you're doing things, like we have an endless well to pull into from just our clients doing really awesome things. And you might have that too. You probably have a lot of clients that are just amazing. And, you want to share the love about them. And then it's kind of like a way that you're aligning your brand with theirs. I'm going to pause for a minute so that way Nanor can kind of do her thing and close things, or Michael, and then we can keep answering questions.
Excellent. Jen, thank you so much. Wow, experience, knowledge, wisdom, practical. A couple of things. I don't know for the rest of you, but when you said take a content inventory, repurpose content, oh my goodness, I'm always thinking what's next, and there's so much that exists already. So that's a big takeaway for me. Another one was, what do you like doing? Revolutionary, let me do the things I like doing. So I really appreciate everything that you shared, but those really jumped out at me. Of course, you've offered to stick around. So a couple of things that I'd like to just remind everyone of. We have a virtual chapter meeting coming up. It's How to Tame Your Advice Monster with the author of The Coaching Habit, and also the author of The Advice Trap. I had to look behind me for the title of the book. And that's on Thursday, February 18th, and that's at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. We would love you to be a part of that. Also, we would love to invite you to our next webinar on Tuesday, February 23rd, where you'll learn more about energy leadership, and our presenter there is Lisa Kaplan. Back to what we've talked about today. Jenn, thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us. On behalf of everyone who's attended today, I want to thank you for being a part of our webinar today. We would love for you to come back on both the 18th and the 23rd and be a part of those next events. Again, thank you for being here. If you need to leave, it's 12 o'clock. That's great. If you would like to stick around and ask Jenn more questions, we're going to keep the room open for a little bit longer. So thank you all for attending, and thank you, Jenn, once again.
Yeah, you bet. I appreciate Cheryl. Thank you for your comment. A 17-time author. That is quite impressive. Yeah, that I'm sure you have lots of content to pull from. That's, and that's one of the benefits of a book, is that it gives you tons of content to work with. I feel like, I saw something about being an author. I don't know where I saw it. Timmy? I don't know if I'm getting that right. Services that you provide for authors. For instance, do you proof copy, layout, handle covers, all of the above. So we have just a wide range of whether you're just starting to write your book and you don't know how to finish it, or you have your manuscript written and you need to publish it. Anything in between, you can certainly check out my website, and we can certainly talk to. Can you recommend a brand company who can help with colors, etc.? Oh, this is a big one. So you can work with a branding company. However, I'm going to give you the budget version here. What you can do is that you can go to 99 Designs. It is a crowdsourcing website, and they have a lot of really amazing designers on it. And what you can do is that they have a logo package that's like $300, and then they have a brand identity package that might be $400 or $500. And what they'll do is that they'll create the logo for you, but then they'll also give you the brand identity. And so that's really just kind of it's usually like a one-page PDF that has the colors that your brand that your brand uses. So like the colors that are on your screen, like that blue, I can tell you is 0081C6. So it's like that level of like specificity. So anywhere you see that blue, it is always that same blue. And so what they'll do is that they'll put all of that kind of information down for you. They'll tell you what font was used in the logo. And so that can be the beginning of the branding. You don't, especially, and I'm making assumptions here about like doing this on a budget, but, because brand strategists, you can easily pay, $5,000 for somebody to come in and do kind of like a strategy audit, kind of look at everything. And that's probably on the lower end. And so what you can do is, if you don't have a brand established yet, start to build it on your own. Just start to, look at what colors you're kind of attracted to, what your clients are attracted to, and just start there. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a matter of kind of starting and then moving our way forward. I'm all about progress over perfection. That is my personal mantra, because perfection really kind of gets in the way, which I know we were talking about before we went live.
And there's I don't know if you saw the question in there. It was when I jumped in. It says, what about reposting someone's content and commenting?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. I had mentioned that, one of the things that we do a lot of is just sharing what our authors are doing. Mm-hmm. So what you could do, this is like my inside tip in secret, that what you can do is set up Google alerts for the people that you work with. So if the people that you're working with, and this is probably more if you're like in business coaching or maybe executive coaching or leadership type of stuff, just set up Google alerts for them. And then whenever they're and you just type in Google alerts inside of Google. And so we have Google alerts set for every single author that we work with. So when someone is featured in Entrepreneur Magazine, or someone is featured in, like somebody just had this really awesome write-up the other day. All we have to do is just share that information. We don't have to say anything. We can just say like, oh my God, we're so proud of, enter whoever's name here. And then you tag them, which gets your information in front of their audience. It makes them feel good because it's a third party validating what it is that they did. It doesn't look so self-promotional when you're like, hey, I just got featured in this really awesome thing. But when you're like, in our case, when your publisher is the one who's saying that, it adds like this whole other level of validity. So it's the same thing with you. You could just, even if you only have, maybe you have a small coaching practice that you have like 4 people in it, and those 4 people are active, share what they're doing, come up with case studies and examples of how you work with people. I just did this, just finished it up last week. And if you want to email me, I'm happy to send it over. But I put together kind of my new coaching package for how we kind of coach people through the book process. And at the end of it, because the common question I get asked all the time is like, well, how long does it take? And like, I know for a fact at this point that I can coach someone through the entirety of a book process if they have the manuscript written already in 5 months. And I know that because I can look through my calendar and say, okay, I talked to them on this date, this date, this date. So I know typically on average, it's about 8 sessions over 5 months and we can get their book done. And so what's great is that I created just a couple very simple case studies where it's the author, what their book looks like. We started working in June. The book was published by October. We met 8 times and the book met their goal of XYZ. So it doesn't have to be like, I'm not talking about putting together like a 12-page case study. It could be very simple because then again, it just gives you more validation for the person that wants to kind of meet with you, especially if you're doing some kind of coaching that has a definitive beginning, middle, and end to the process. How can you kind of quantify that to help your potential client like really understand how you're going to help them and how quickly you're going to help them? It's 8:05 in the UK. I love it. Thank you for joining us. And I saw that someone is here from Morocco, which is also amazing. So cool.
I think, Jen, were you looking for the question from Timmy? It says services that you provide for authors. For instance, do you proof copy, do layout, or handle covers?
Yep. And I had said all of the above. You can certainly, I don't even think I have my website in this presentation, so that is not overly helpful. But if we go back to, it's Publish Your Purpose or publishyourpurposepress.com. Either way gets to me.
Well, you're going to share with us some of these resources, and we will definitely send it out to everyone who registered via our survey, in addition to the link to the recording, so you can listen to it one more time. So this is wonderful. Oh my God. Like plethora of information. Like you said, I love the first slide with the hose of information. I was like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Yeah, buckle up because we're in for a ride. Yeah, which is why and I'm glad that you recorded it so everyone can kind of go back to it. And those that weren't able to attend live, then they can go back to it as well. Because it is a lot of information. But even if you just kind of listened to a section, then paused and kind of sequentially went through. But honestly, even if you just take my 2 spreadsheets of the content in the marketing inventory and just start there, it is a great fundamental, just foundational starting point.
Yeah. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think. Welcome.
Excellent. Yeah, I don't see any additional questions coming in.
All right.
Yeah, I think we're ready to, close the show. So thank you everyone for attending. And as Michael said, looking forward to seeing you next.
Excellent. Thank you, Jen, so much once again for all of the information you shared with us. Just from watching people's comments, I can see they're encouraged and excited. So